Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. Your host looks a little bit different today. My name is Britt Allen, and I am the Digital Marketing Manager for Right on Crime, which is an initiative here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And I am so excited to be joined by one of my favorite people here at the foundation, Miss Selene Rodriguez.
Hi, Britt.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm a little tired and hot, but it's okay. It's just another day in this beautiful state.
It's another day in Texas. God bless Texas, even when it is a million degrees.
Yeah.
Selene, if for some reason someone doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you just introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do here?
So my name is Selene Rodriguez. I am the Assistant Director of Federal Affairs here at TPPF. So I started as an intern, came on shortly afterwards as a policy scholar, then moved up to policy analyst, and then my current position, which I love, by the way. I've been with the foundation a little over 2 years. Before that, I had various jobs focused on raising my kids, which were only 2 at the time, but now there's 3. And before that, I served in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And I am married to an incredible man who works very hard in the Texas oil fields.
Oh, that's amazing. God bless him. We love our husbands, don't we?
We try to.
We tried to. So I know that you work really closely with States Trust. Could you tell me just a little bit more about what States Trust is if people aren't familiar with it?
So, and a lot of people aren't, so that's a great question. States Trust is our federal initiative. It's kind of some people that we implanted in the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C., right there next to the Capitol, and we try to keep our Congress, our legislators up there accountable to making sure that states are protected, that states' rights are protected. So we've got a great team up there. They advocate for states' rights, making sure that legislation, sounds like I'm saying states a lot, but, legislation throughout various states is being heard and respected at the federal level. Which is something a lot of people don't consider when you're a state-based think tank.
Right.
You kind of only have the perspective of your state, but you have to make sure that the federal government is respecting that and following within constitutional bounds.
Yeah, preach it. That's amazing. So when it comes to your background, will you tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up, but then also, how did you find your way into the policy world?
Yeah, so I grew up in Del Rio, Texas. When I was 8 years old, I decided I was going to join the Marine Corps. And I just kind of never changed my mind. The biggest battle growing up was, am I going to go to college and get commissioned, or am I just going to enlist?
Right.
So on my 17th birthday, God bless my parents, I came home from basketball practice, I think, and there was 2 Marine recruiters in my living room. And my stepdad looked at me and he said, "We know you really want to do this. We'd rather you do it with our support."
Wow.
Than feeling like we're not behind you, basically. So I went straight to the recruiter's office that day. I enlisted on my 17th birthday. I spent my senior year in the delayed entry program. I left a week after boot camp, and throughout that whole time, I knew I wanted to go into policy. I wasn't quite sure how. I didn't know if I wanted to be a politician. And now that I work in policy, I don't think I want to be a politician. I think I'm where I'm meant to be.
I think that's the general consensus of about everybody in this building, too.
Right. Yeah. You're kind of like, oh, don't really get a lot done there. It's harder to get things done. So after the Marine Corps, I decided to use my education benefits. We moved up to the Austin area because my husband got a job up here. I went to Texas State University and I learned about the political science department, and I decided, let's go with that.
Yeah.
I ended up getting my degree, and now I'm graduating in December with my master's degree in political science. Thank God for TPPF, and shameless plug for Jason Isaac because he found me at the county GOP that I was volunteering at and was like, if you want to help, I need help. So he brought me here as an intern, and I just kind of stuck around. You can't get rid of me easy here. I really love it.
And thank goodness that we can't, because the work that you do here is just so incredible. I'm just so excited to be able to talk to you and all the work that you do. But I didn't realize that it was Jason Isaac that brought you over. So that's incredible.
I emailed Carrie Isaac, his wife, who was campaigning at the time. She hadn't been elected yet. And I just said, I need some volunteer hours for graduate school. I'm happy. If you need help with anything, I'm happy to help. And she bounced that to Jason, and he called me and he said, I know you. I think I like you. What can you do? Do you want to help me? I know your husband's in the oil field.
Awesome.
And I said, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes to protect his job. So...
That's great. So I want to go backwards a little bit to the Marine Corps. Okay. So you said from a very early age that you knew you wanted to enlist. Can you tell what was it that made you want to be in the Marine Corps? And can you tell me a little bit more about your time there?
So it sounds really cheesy. I get that. But I became very patriotic at a very young age. I remember 9/11. I was in second grade, but I remember very vividly. I was homesick, and I remember my grandma turning on the news and just kind of falling into a puddle of just tears.
Wow.
And over the course of the next few months, you know, I was learning what was happening at a really young age. But what I saw was this country come together in such an impactful way.
Yeah.
And that hit me. Like, I would hear, like I said, it's cheesy, but I would hear Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA, and I would tear up as a kid. And I love this country. I want to serve this country. I didn't know about the Marine Corps. I went to an Army base when I was very young, and I saw Marines in their dress blues, and I was like, Mom, what is that? That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, that's the Marine Corps. So instantly I was like, tell me everything about the Marine Corps. I learned about them, quickly realized they are the best. And from a young age, I was very much, if you're going to do something, do it all the way or don't do it at all.
Wow.
So, I enlisted, and I loved my time in the Marine Corps. I was an O231 intelligence specialist.
Wow.
So I went to the Navy Marine Corps Intelligence Training Center in Dam Neck, Virginia, and then I spent the entirety of my enlistment on Camp Pendleton, California.
Wow. So what I heard there is that you saw the outfits and you were like, that's what I need to be a part of.
Yeah, that's a good thing to catch. Yeah,
100%. So one of the other things I really, really admire about you specifically is that not too long ago, you were not only raising 2 children, but you were pregnant with your 3rd.
Yep.
You were studying for your master's degree, and you were handling all of your work here.
Yeah.
First off, are you okay?
No.
Second off, how did you do it? Like, how do you balance all of that? It seems like you're just excelling so well at home as well as here at work, clearly. So tell me a little bit about what that was like to be juggling all of it at once.
This also is going to probably anger some women in the audience, but I had a really supportive partner. My husband is incredible.
Yeah.
He gave me so much grace when I needed it the most. When I said, hey, I think I just want to go to school right now, he said, all right, I'll work. You go to school. And I was able to focus on being home with my kids and finishing school. And then when it came to finding a job, that was really hard. I think I applied for over 50 jobs. Over a couple of years. I worked as a pizza delivery driver while I was going for my undergrad, and I just remember a lot of times I didn't think I could do it. A lot of days I probably didn't, but that's okay. So I guess I just did it with a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
My faith is the ultimate number one thing to me in my foundation. A lot of trusting God and giving myself grace and leaning on my partner, on my husband, when I really needed that extra support, and letting him kind of pick up the slack and know that I don't have to do it all.
Right.
But what I do, I can give my best at doing.
Yeah. That is so good, especially now. I feel like in this culture of feminism that's, I mean, it's permeated everywhere. And I know we even feel it on the conservative side sometimes. To hear someone say, like, it's okay to ask for help and to receive help, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is just so refreshing to hear and so different from what society is telling us right now.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I want to take that and move into our segment of the Policy Pulse. Now, I know that you are extremely, extremely integrated with our work here at the southern border. So I want to go over a couple of stats that you sent me and get your pulse on it. So you sent me that just this past Labor Day weekend at the Rio Grande Valley alone, we had 6,038 migrant apprehensions. We had 172 gotaways, 19 human smuggling cases, 23 human smugglers captured, 10 narcotic seizures.
Yeah.
And I want to reiterate, this is just at the Rio Grande Valley, just this weekend. We're not even talking about the rest of the border.
So we don't have time to talk about the rest of the border.
No, we'd be here all week. But Seline, break this down for me. Like, what does all this mean, and what is the state of the border crisis here in Texas?
Yeah, so I'll backtrack on that. Like I said, I'm from Del Rio. And before these last few years, when people say, oh, where are you from? I say Del Rio. Okay, I don't know what that is, but okay.
Right.
And now I say, oh, I'm from Del Rio, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Like,
everybody knows.
How are you? The state of the border right now is we have an administration that says the border's closed. Our policies are working. Everything's fine. That's not the truth. These policies have effectively created an open border, and the transnational criminal organizations are in control. They control most, if not everything, of what comes across from Mexico into Texas. And my own hometown, we had the Haitian crisis in 2021, and that's kind of where everything kicked off in Del Rio. What's funny, though, and when you see those stats, everybody thinks, oh, it's just asylum seekers. It's not. And even when we had that Haitian crisis, the majority of them did not come straight from Haiti. They don't come straight from their home country. They live in other countries, and then they spend 5 to 7 years in places like Colombia or Peru, and then they come here because they hear it's easy.
Right.
So that's where we're at right now. Those numbers are staggering. They're awful. But like you said, that's one sector, one weekend. And when you have these border communities like mine and communities in the Rio Grande Valley, they can't sustain this. They won't be able to. And I love being able to work here at a place like this where we're part of the solution. We're trying to be part of the solution. Telling, the governor what we think would work and seeing him put in place policies that do have a positive impact and help these communities. It's not pretty down there, but the communities are resilient. And they're doing their best.
That's so good. So, I mean, like you said, you grew up in a border area. You've been to the border a few times for work, several times probably, and seen a lot. I've only been to the border one time for work, and it was actually in Arizona. And for me, I didn't come back from that border trip the same person, in the sense that, we read statistics all day long here at the foundation, and if you're involved in policy work, it's a lot of stats. And that's really important, right? Because it shows the research is on our side, but it's really easy to forget about the faces and the lives and the individuals of people on both sides of the wall who are affected by this. And so for me, when I went down there and I saw it firsthand, like, I was just not okay afterwards. I really, really struggled. So tell me a little bit about, like, as you spent time at the border, what are some of the things that you've seen that has stuck out to you or, made you think twice about, like, everything that's happening down there?
So I've done, I think, 6 TPPF border trips with our team down there. It is different than just going and visiting family, which I do so often, because you're kind of not paying attention to that stuff when you're not in work mode. One of the most significant things I saw on our second trip, which was to Del Rio, we were at the river at a high crossing area. First important thing was that's a spot that my family has fished in for years.
Wow.
Like just being able to pull up to this private property where they kind of know everybody and you can go fish right there in the Rio Grande. Which is now like a Fox News hotspot. You can kind of count that there's always crossings right there. So we took the group there. It was covered in clothes, backpacks, diapers, baby food, all of these personal belongings that are all soaking wet because as they come out of the river, they drop everything and then they go find Border Patrol. But what was crazy, and I'd seen it before, but I think it stuck with me because I was with people who hadn't seen it before, was there was a smuggler pull up, and one of the DPS officers that was there was like, oh, that's a smuggler. Like, we've seen that car before. We know who that person is. And he had what we believe to be, I don't know, it looked like a mom and 3 young kids. And they were kind of watching us. We were watching them. We were with a bunch of National Guard and DPS. And so it was kind of waiting to gauge that moment. But it, like you said, it brings the humanity to the situation. Yes, this is a crisis for both parties involved, but don't take away the humanity from it. These are still parents and children and people that really don't know what's going on. And it's a crisis that's beyond their control.
I can't even imagine from your point of view, too, being a mom of 3. And it's like you see yourself in that person. And it just becomes a connection that, like, that's so much more powerful than just thinking about the number. So that's amazing. You had an op-ed recently posted in the Washington Times, and if you haven't read it, I recommend you read it. You can see it on the Canon online here as well. But you wrote about how the DOJ demanded that Texas remove the buoy barrier system in the Rio Grande Valley River. Tell me a little bit about the buoy barrier. Like, what are the misconceptions? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, let's set the record straight.
And I'll also add, there's a great video on the TPPF YouTube where I interviewed former Chief of the Border Patrol, Rodney Scott, and we talk all things buoy barrier. So that's also a great resource. But it's basically just 1,000 feet. It sounds like a lot, but it's not when you look at the Rio Grande River, of buoys that are anchored to the bottom of the river by 3,000 pound anchors per 3 buoys.
Right.
So it is not going anywhere.
Right.
It is built to be moved if need be, or built to be added onto or taken away from. It can be completely removed. It would take about 2 to 3 weeks to do that. So this barrier was put in place to redirect all of the foot traffic coming across the Rio Grande River to safe pathways, as in ports of entry.
Right.
Letting people know, like, you don't have to cross here because there was a huge increase in injuries and deaths for people trying to cross the river. And I grew up swimming there. It's very unpredictable.
Sure.
While a lot of the water levels are generally low, the current can pick up at any time, and that water level will rise very quickly. So the governor did a great step forward, and he said, let's do this barrier, let's see how it works. I've spoken with DPS. They've said it is working.
Yeah.
And what's important to know is it's part of a 3-layer system. At least as far as objects go. You have the barrier, you have the concertina wire, which is not razor wire, it's concertina wire, and then you have the shipping containers, and then you have DPS and National Guard with megaphones and signs saying, do not cross here, seek a port of entry. So it's not just one thing. It is saving lives. It is making a positive impact. It is showing good results.
Yeah.
And we are working hard to show support to the governor and his team, and that hearing was absolutely ridiculous. Their main argument, which they said was all about the navigability of the river. I've never seen commercial anything trying to navigate through the Rio Grande in that part. Anyway, in that part of the river. But other than that, it was, we're making Mexico mad. So effectively, this case has become the Biden administration teaming up with a very corrupt government in Mexico against the state of Texas.
Wow.
And I think it's just kind of time that we all stand up and say no and protect our sovereignty.
It's really interesting that you say that this is actually something that is saving migrant lives.
Yeah.
Because the way that the left's media narrative is painting this is that it's like a death trap out there.
It's inhumane.
Right, it's inhumane, when in reality, like, this is something that's a safeguard for people to be able to cross safely. Like, if we're going to do it, make sure we're not losing as few human lives as possible. So,
and not just migrants, but also the lives of the law enforcement on the border.
Right,
we did lose a National Guardsman who was very young, who tried to go save people that were drowning.
Wow.
And it turned out that they were running drugs, and he lost his life, you know. So we're trying to be as effective as we can in protecting both sides, like you said earlier.
That's amazing. And thank you for explaining that. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in all of the different articles and op-eds that go around, but that is just such a clear-cut way of explaining this is what it actually is. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different misconceptions and narratives when it comes to the southern border, especially with all of the different states that it affects. So now I think is also a great time. What are some of the misconceptions that you've seen that you would just love to clear up and get the record straight and want people to know if they watch this episode?
I think the most important thing would be the people. A lot of people who aren't from border states they have a big misunderstanding of the people.
Right.
Yes, it's a predominantly Hispanic community along these border communities, and a lot of people just assume, oh, they're all liberal Democrats, you know, because they're Hispanic and they're on the border. That's not the case. When you go down to these communities and you talk to them and you say, hey, how is this affecting your home, your livelihoods, your businesses, your private property? They're angry. They're upset. They want help. They want the governor to do something. They want the president to do something. And up north, they're completely oblivious to that. They're like, oh, you're ruining these people's lives by taking these measures, these racist, xenophobic measures. And it's like, you can't just yell racist and xenophobic every time something upsets you. Go listen to these people. Go talk to them. Go learn from them. They're angry. They want help. They're very proud. I'm Hispanic. We're very cultural people. We're very proud of our heritage. But when we actually learn the policies and what this means or that means, for the most part, we are conservative people. And we just need people, like here at TPPF who understand these issues to come tell us what's actually happening. And so that's the biggest misunderstanding, I would say, is people misunderstand the community and the culture.
It's really interesting also to hear you say, like, that you're a Hispanic woman. And, obviously the left media is really, really big on identity politics. And I can just imagine being a Hispanic woman who is, doing so much positive work, to help the policies, to help our southern border. I'm sure you are just getting the brunt end of a lot of that identity politics. What is that like for you?
Yeah, it's funny when TPPF posts something that I write or one of my videos, and then there's almost always a comment, oh, and look, she's Hispanic or she's Mexican. What a traitor. Or how can she be saying these things?
Wow.
And, I think because of my culture and because of my heritage, I have a right to stand up and say no or yes to certain things. There's always going to be those types of people, but I'm secure in who I am.
100%.
And everybody else can just pound sand.
Well said. And then if like our co-host Ariana Silva is also a Hispanic woman, and
from the border.
Yeah, and she deals, I think, with similar types of language being thrown at her. What would you say if there are conservative women who are of Hispanic descent or of color who deal with really similar, accusations being thrown their way?
I would say, remember that you're not the only one. There's probably another woman around you in your shoes that wants to say the things that you're saying and do the things that you're doing. And she needs people like you and like me to stand up and do it.
Yeah.
So that that person can get the courage to come out and have her own voice too.
Yeah.
And if one person doesn't do it, how is everybody else going to get the courage to do it? It's kind of like with masking. If one person stops wearing their mask, other people are going to get the courage to stop wearing their masks.
No, that's so good. I love that you said it that way. And obviously the southern border is a really heavy topic, but I want to kind of start moving into a different direction. You and I could talk about this forever, and I wish we could. So we're going to move into our
another podcast.
Yeah? Why not make a part 2?
Right?
I'm down for that. So we'll move into our pop culture with principles, and we were kind of discussing the different things that we might want to talk about. One of the things you told me is that you're a big fan of the show Yellowstone.
Yeah.
I am too. So obviously it's been in the news a lot lately with, Kevin Costner's leaving due to scheduling conflicts, and I think a lot of things going on in his personal life. But tell me about why you love Yellowstone, because I feel like a lot of Texans really resonate with the show and the popularity to the Western lifestyle. So let's break it down.
Well, I actually grew up on a ranch. I grew up in a very small community, probably population 500. About another half hour west from there, my family runs and works a ranch.
Wow.
Beautiful ranch right along the Rio Grande River. It's a lifestyle that you are very blessed to know about if you know about it. And I think Yellowstone really brought that into so many people's homes. People that have never experienced this life, or people that maybe did in one point of time, but work brought them into the city, or like me, and we want to kind of relive that.
Yeah.
And the drama's great, and Yellowstone love the drama.
So good.
Everybody's killing each other to save the ranch. But for me, it's like the scenes that get to me the most are where they're doing roundups or just basic ranch work. I just feel so thrilled when I see those scenes. And I think a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, can appreciate that more.
Yeah. And you know what I think is so cool is Hollywood does a really, really great job of projecting what it's like to live in LA or New York, and very concrete jungle type of everybody lives that way. Yeah. And we just don't. Most of us don't live that way and live in those types of cities or have that type of lifestyle. And to be able to see something come out of Hollywood that, obviously it's very dramatized, and obviously the Dutton family do have some questionable morals when it comes to certain things, but to see an accurate representation of camaraderie and family loyalty in this Western lifestyle, and how there's this sense of
what it takes
honor.
to hold on to that lifestyle.
Right. Preserving that lifestyle. Right. That's so good. So I'm so interested. I didn't realize that you grew up on a ranch. So would you say that real life ranching, what are the parallels between the show and living on a ranch?
In my experience, I didn't grow up in Montana now, but other than killing everybody that threatens you, everything else was pretty similar. Okay. I'm
glad that that's one of the things that differs.
Yeah, cattle roundups, kind of those week-long trips where you're out there, we're just going to be sleeping on the ground for now because we have to protect the cattle.
That's so cool.
For me, though, my family worked the ranch. So my grandma and my aunt, incredible women that I get so much of my drive from.
Yeah.
And I'll say their names because they're amazing. My grandma's Lola. My aunt is Allie. They work so hard. And I remember growing up, we'd go out there and they'd just be in the kitchen all day, breakfast, lunch, dinner for all the cowboys that are doing Roundup. And they'd come in. And I just had so much respect and gratitude for that type of lifestyle, watching my family provide these meals and some sense of home to these cowboys that came out here for days at a time.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's very similar, the work that you do in trying to preserve all of that you're putting the work into.
Right. So how do you feel about Kevin Costner leaving the show a little prematurely?
I think it's gonna, I don't want to say ruin the show, but it's going to be really hard to watch without Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
I could totally do without the love interest in the last season.
I agree.
That was kind of pathetic.
I would agree.
Opinion. I could have gone for something. I was digging the governor.
Yeah.
That was a great love interest. But to show you how prepared I was for today, I'm wearing my Yellowstone perfume. I don't know what it's called because it doesn't say it, but I love it.
What's it smell like?
Not a ranch. But you might be grateful for that right now.
I was gonna say, I can imagine that, like, if there's like a men's cologne, maybe it smells like, if it was named Rip, it would smell like cattle or something. And
I would wear that.
Honestly, same.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something to that. I think what else is really cool about the popularity of Yellowstone is, you know, here in Texas, like, we do have a certain sense of style, like, clearly. Like, she's got her boots on. Boots are, you know, a form of heritage for us. Our hats, our work jackets, a good pair of jeans. That's just something we've always had. And even as, like, style ebbs and flows, like, those staples in Texas have always remained. And what I think is cool about Yellowstone is it has shifted what fashion looks like, even in places like New York. Truly, it was getting dire out there, y'all. But if you're looking at the runways, you're seeing cowboy boots and everything. And I just think that that is so refreshing.
Oh, I love it. I actually saw a hashtag once, probably like around season 2, I think, on Facebook, and it was hashtag Beth Dutton earrings. Where do I find them? Because Beth Dutton has such a unique and distinct style.
Yes.
Right? But if you pay attention, her earrings are always just like the epitome of Montana ranch girl, I guess.
Right.
It's like type that gets dressed up anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's like the very like Native American influence with the turquoise and the stone.
And even Beth, who's not in that ranch lifestyle, you know, she's the city girl. She's got her degree, comes back just to kind of help run the business of the ranch. But her style is so iconic to women, and I love that.
Yeah, and her attitude's iconic as well. Questionable sometimes, but still iconic.
Yeah.
So you watch 1883 and 1923 too. I haven't watched those yet, but like, tell me a little bit about.
Out.
I know it's on my to-do list. It really is. But tell me a little bit about, like, does it capture the same ethos as like this, you know, preservation of family and values and things like that?
1883 is how did the Duttons get there, right? So it's showing the journey from coming from like the city life, making that Oregon Trail type life that they had back then, fighting off Indians and diseases and the elements of life in the wild west. So it really gives you a good grasp on why in Yellowstone it's so important to Kevin Costner's character that they preserve that, because that's something that, you know, I think it's James Dutton fights so hard to get in the first place. And you can tell that grit in his characters, like, we're not letting this go. But a funny note, though, in 1883, the last episode, he gets land that becomes part of the Yellowstone Ranch, from an Indian tribe. And he said the Indian who helps him, the Native American who helps him, says, but in 7 generations, my people are going to come to get it back from you. And James actually says, in 7 generations, you can have it. And in Yellowstone, it is 7 generations later. He says, I'm a 7 generation rancher. So it's kind of like, if you think about it, is it time to kind of start letting go of little bits of the ranch? What are you supposed to do? But how are we going to know that if he's gone?
Well, suddenly I have to go and catch up on 1883. No, that's awesome. And yeah, like I said, there's just something so cool about Yellowstone bringing, like, these values that Texans, you know, have held and continue to hold so dear, and this idea of preserving this way of life and our families and our values, to see that be so mainstream, I mean, that has to be a win for us when it comes to entertainment.
Well, people always make fun of Texans, like, why are you so proud of your history and your heritage, and what's so great about, like, why do you love Texas so much?
Yeah.
Though the shows are based in Montana and all that, I think it really gives you a good grasp of what you have to go through to have this type of lifestyle, and what it takes to maintain it.
Yes.
And holding on to that Texas identity, which TPPF does so well.
Yeah, they do.
It's really something to be proud of. And so I think Yellowstone, the story, the morals, the ethics behind it, it just kind of gives the rest of the world a glimpse into what that is like.
Yeah. I'm not a native Texan. I'm a California. Don't come after me in the comments. I know. I love things about it, but I don't miss it. But that was my attitude too. When I got here, I was just like, I don't get it. And then a year after living in Texas, I was like, I understand. Like, I suddenly
I need all the cowboy boots.
I need all the cowboy boots. Like, I am so ride or die for Texas. And you know, I wasn't raised here, but it's so funny how even when you live here and you're amongst the culture and the people, it is just so easy to like get involved and feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. So,
and those are the types of transplants we want.
Yes. Come one, come all. If that's your attitude. Big if. No, that's awesome. So I want to move into our advice segment, which is where our listeners will submit questions for our guests, all amazing women that are just thriving in work and at home. So the first question comes from a listener, and she says, a lot of women, particularly conservatives, where we do value things like motherhood and family so much above all else, sometimes it feels like we can be torn between having to choose between excelling in your career and excelling at home. You know, sometimes the left is so career driven, but also sometimes on the conservative side, we're so big about staying home.
The homestead movement.
It is, and which is great. But what is your best advice for the women who find themselves in the middle and want both?
You can have it all, but it's not all going to be pretty, is my advice. You really have to give yourself grace and know certain limits on both ends. I never wanted to be a parent growing up. I wanted to be like that boss, that baddie career woman type thing that we see now. I think they're called like corporate baddies or something. That was probably my goal, like post-military. Yeah. And then I met my husband, and he was like, no, I want all the kids. And I said, well, we'll see. But they grew on me. My kids grew on me. They're great. But I didn't want to give up so much of my dreams because I had kids. So I just kind of found ways. I found a routine that worked for us. Prioritizing family while still trying to prioritize your goals can be hard, but if you kind of find that balance that works for your family, it helps. But like I said, you have to give yourself grace, and you can do it. You can be that traditional mom, wife who still comes home and makes dinner, not every day. Whoever does it every day, like, God bless you.
Oh, they deserve a medal.
And you can still get up at 6 a.m. to get your family ready and get out the door and have a successful day at work. It's harder, it's tiring, but it's rewarding, and it's a beautiful life. Yeah.
No, that's so refreshing because, I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I think that's a conversation for a lot of conservative women who love their job like we do, of like, gosh, we really want to be able to have a family, but I also really, really want my career. So it's just so inspiring to see somebody like you who truly, truly values being a mother, but also can still value and make time for your work.
Well, groceries are expensive, so.
Girl, that's a whole nother conversation.
When kids love fruit, as much as my kids do.
I know, and you got 3 kids to feed. So God bless you for that. And then the other question that came in is, you know, it's really easy when you talk about something as heavy as the southern border to feel pessimistic and sad. And maybe there are a lot of reasons to feel that way. But why do you feel optimistic about the state of the southern border? Because, you know, there has to be some indication that we as a state or a nation are kind of moving in the right direction. What do you think about that?
2 reasons I feel optimistic. Well, actually make that 3. 1, my faith, like I said. I know that there are good people working on this, right? And I know that if we pray and we do the work, we can get there.
Yeah.
But 1, 2, and 3 would be the people in those communities. They're not going to give up. Like I said, they're resilient.
Yeah.
They're going to continue to be voices, and I will continue to amplify those voices. I've got friends and family there. We know people across the entirety of the Texas southern border. They're not going to give up.
Right.
And then the last element is the leaders of the state. Governor Abbott is showing that Texas won't give up and we won't back down, and we'll continue to support him in that. And if we have leaders that will show that type of resiliency and effort towards securing the safety of not just this state, but this nation, right? As Texas goes, so goes the nation. Then I know that we're going to be okay. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to be a headache for everyone involved, but we're going to be okay. We just have to keep fighting for not just those of us on this side of the border, but those who are being smuggled across and end up being trafficked when they're here. People affected by the drugs coming across, but we're not going to give up. We're not going to be silent.
Right.
We're going to fight hard, and I love being a part of that fight.
That is so good. And it's so refreshing because, like I said, it's so easy to be pessimistic about this because there's a lot to be upset about. And you turn on the news and it's just like, how are we ever going to dig our way out of something this deep? But to hear that, like, you know as much as you do and you still find a way to feel positive and feel optimistic, and that you still show up to work every single day because you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, you heard it here first. Like, this is the place to be.
Yeah.
So
well,
I
think
love
the
that.
light at the end of the tunnel is the people that I get to work with to do this, right? I mean, just in the Border Security Immigration Project alone here, we've got an incredible team. And that team is mostly led by women, which I think is incredible. It's awesome. It's powerful. And it's not just women who got there for the sake of being a woman.
Right.
It's women who have put in the work and have the passion and have earned those positions. And I'm so proud to be on that team. But to know that I get to come here and I get to work with these people who care about what they're doing, who want to make a difference, that really gives me the drive I need to know, like I said, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, you girls could run the world with the amount of work that you do.
Don't
I mean,
tempt us.
it's really incredible. And that kind of leads into my last question from a listener from the advice segment is that, you know, she says that the border issue can feel a little bit scary, particularly for women, because it's something that really affects women and children, whether you are a migrant crossing or if you are someone here in the United States who, you know, your city is being, you know, just overrun with illegal immigration. You know, how can people get involved who want to help in the process, who maybe don't work at a TPPF or don't have a policy background? Like, what's your advice for someone who wants to help?
You don't have to have a degree in policy or political science to get involved in policy. Actually, grassroots is the most powerful form of policy for advocating for yourself and your communities. Moms. I believe that moms are going to change the scope of this entire nation because we're angry, we're fed up. We see what's happening to our kids, we see what's happening to other kids. So I think really just figuring out learning how you can get involved, how you can advocate for yourself, whether that be writing letters to your representative, calling your representative. A lot of people don't know that you can show up at the Texas Capitol and walk into a legislator's office. People don't know that. And it kind of blows their mind when they realize that they can. You have every right, and it's a beautiful freedom in this country and in this state to walk into any legislator's office and say, I'm so-and-so. This concern means XYZ to me because of this. Do it. If you can't be here to do it, you can call, you can write letters, you can reach out to people like TPPF and other think tanks and say, hey, these are the issues I have. And I've worked the front desk. We get those calls all the time. We don't ignore them. You know, we go to the education team. We say, hey, there's a lot of parents that really have this concern at this school district. So if you have something to say it. Don't hold it down. Don't think nobody's going to listen to me. Somebody's going to listen to you. And if you find the right person, they're going to amplify your voice. So just don't stop screaming your concerns. Be loud and be passionate about what you're being loud about so that you're not just another loud voice in the crowd.
That's a nice reminder. The government works for us.
They're supposed to.
Yeah, they're supposed to. That's really amazing, Seline. Thank you so much. So just to wrap up our episode, what are the resources for people to keep up with the border crisis or stories and stay in the loop about the latest data and news?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the website, texaspolicy.com. If you go to initiatives, you can find Secure and Sovereign Texas, Right on Immigration, though by the time this episode comes out, we'll probably have a different name because we are very excited about this, merging into one big campaign.
Amazing.
So we're kind of going to have our team a little bit more working cohesively, expand on a lot of the policies we do, go to YouTube. So many incredible videos. I mean, look at the studio. We're doing great things in here when it comes to our video production, our podcast production. So go to TPPF on YouTube, texaspolicy.com, on Twitter. You can find all of us on Twitter that work on these issues, where we're pretty much daily saying, this is what happened today, this is why it matters to you. And we want people to hear that. We want people to have access to that.
Amazing.
And we want to help them get the information that they need.
Yeah, that's great. And then where can people keep up with specifically you and your work?
Oh, if you are that bored with your life, you can follow me on Twitter. I believe it's Mariah_Seline is my username. And that's where I post pretty much everything in relation to this stuff. And then obviously for the other nerds in our audience, LinkedIn, you can be found on my Twitter.
Awesome. Seline, thank you so much for coming here and talking all about the border and about your life. What you do is amazing, and we're just so thrilled to be able to have you on the team. So thank y'all so much for tuning in to this episode of the Sweet Tea series. We will see y'all next time.
I'm Sherry Sylvester, host of the Ninth in Congress podcast. I've been working at the nexus of politics and public policy my entire career. On Ninth in Congress, I'll be talking about my journey from the progressive left to the conservative right and my past 2 decades in the Texas Capitol with key policy and political players who have made our state a conservative model for the world. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.